Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Carlos Perez, and I'd love to welcome you to Nova Southeastern University. We're located in Davie, Fort Lauderdale, and we have campuses around the state of Florida. And we've got a special group today. We're going to have a very casual chat and talk a little bit about our inspirations and provide some positive vibes over the internet. So let me just go around, and we're going to have everybody introduce themselves. Who wants to go first?
Sarah.
I nominate Greg.
I like Sarah.
That's fine, I'll go. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Valley Gray. I'm a faculty member in the College of Psychology in the Department of Clinical and School Psych, and I direct our School Psych doctoral program. So welcome. We're glad you're here. Okay, do we throw the ball from there? I'll throw it to Greg. He's right
Oh,
next to me.
thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Gregory Gale. I am the Director of Recruitment and Admissions at NSU's College of Psychology, and I'm excited to be here to have this wonderful conversation. I have sort of heard these individuals talk, and I'm looking forward to hearing them talk again. And do I have to play the devil's advocate, or do I just sort of listen and smile?
You could be yourself.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna, on my screen, the real JT is right there. So
It varies depending on where you're in. So she might be down below.
I just have it in a column, actually. So,
Yeah, she's Marcia on the Brady Bunch for me.
I always wanted to be Greg.
See,
Okay.
people say the Brady Bunch. I wanted the Hollywood Squares.
Oh,
You're the real JT. Is that Justin Timberlake?
No, because when JT came along, the other JT, I had to recognize that I was the original, the OG JT. Because I'm a few years older, like a couple.
Well, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Dr. Jamie Tartar. I am the program director for the neuroscience program here at NSU. And the real JT.
And then you get to call the next one.
Let me call little JT.
I guess that title falls on me. My name is Julius Thomas. I'm a clinical psychology student at Nova. I also do research in neuroscience with the real JT, who just happens to be a smidge shorter, but we won't rub that in too much. So it's great to be able to talk with you guys today and do what we can to, like Lo said, spread some positive vibes. And Dr. Gerson, it's on you.
thanks so much, little JT, which I met you in person. So yeah, I would be looking up at you. Anyway, my name is Dr. Tara Gerson. I am chair of the NSU Department of Counseling. So I am so lucky to be training our counselors in clinical mental health counseling, school counseling, substance abuse counseling, and applied behavior analysis. And also coming to you here from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the yachting capital of the world. Again, from our earlier discussion, I don't have a yacht, but I love living near the water and enjoying all the beauty and sunshine that South Florida offers. So thanks for having me.
My name is Dr. Carlos Manuel Perez y Cordova. I like to say that every once in a while just to confuse people, but that is my given name. You could call me Los. I am the Director of Outreach for the College of Psychology at Nova Southeastern University. I've got about 25 years in higher ed experience, and I've been at campuses in Michigan, South Carolina, Oregon, New Jersey, where I grew up. And one of the things that I wanted to do in assembling this panel list of some of my best friends at the university is to give people an opportunity to talk about inspirations and some of the details that help us make our decisions. And one of the things that I was talking to a relative this weekend is if you're mentoring someone or if you're guiding someone through some tough spots, to somehow give them encouragement and opportunities without applying pressure. And how to engage them in this manner. And that's one of the tones that we have today. We are here to help people consider different ideas and different opportunities and talk a little bit about our aha moments. So I'm going to go right into that question. My first question of today is, what was your aha moment? That moment that you said, this is exactly what I want to do in the next few years. And any volunteers before I call on you?
I'll go first. I think there's a theme. I think the aha moment for me was really recognizing what my passion was. I think oftentimes, especially among undergraduate students, you feel sort of outside pressures, whether they're from family members or society. But it's really important to be self-reflective and to see what really drives you and what makes you feel joy. Because if you can determine that, then you really never have to work a day in your life because you're doing what, brings you joy. And that's a really cool thing.
Okay, anybody want to add to that? And just
Well,
talk.
I'll go next. I think everyone has heard the story that early part of my life, I thought I was going to be a talk show host. So to date myself, I thought I was going to be the next Brian Gumbel. And I don't know, my first real job was a work study in an admissions office. And I loved it. I love talking to people. I love giving tours. I just love what higher ed was all about. And I've had the opportunity to move out of higher ed, but I've always come back. The reason why is I love working with incredibly bright people. I love hearing people's backgrounds. Higher ed attracts, I think, so many positive people from backgrounds that I'm not familiar with, and just ways of thinking. And I don't really know of another place on this planet where you would have that kind of diversity and positivity. And so if I'm talking to someone, obviously choose something you love, something you like, but also surround yourself with people who are positive, and that will sort of, help you as you go through any process that you're going through.
Can somebody else give us a little bit of their aha moment?
I guess I could hop in next. I think my aha moment kind of happened when I realized that it didn't matter how high functioning you were, what you did for a living, how much you earned, that doesn't make you exempt from suffering. And it took kind of a long time to work through that misconception of that if you're a doctor, if you're a professional athlete, everything in your life is good. And as I was able to reflect and think about the areas that I personally wanted to grow in and that others around me could use some help in, I started to ask myself, why aren't more people doing something about it? And then I think, as any responsible social person, you can only ask yourself, why isn't somebody else doing something about it for so long before you decide to kind of pick up that task and do something about it yourself. So I've just been very encouraged to want to help other people and not look at them as based on, what their status is, whether that's low functioning or high functioning, and say, what can I do to help you? So it's been really a privilege of mine to be able to go back to school and to start becoming more skilled and learn the ways that psychology uses to help people live better lives. So, I just want to see people enjoy what they're doing and make the most out of the short time we have here on this planet, and just really enjoy each other.
I want to echo that because I think that's very well said about not only, I think, having some sort of a calling of service, because that's a little bit about how I see my role as a mental health counselor, to be able to sit in the room or sit in that space with someone who is hurting, and to kind of be a healing force. I am a little weird, I think, in that I kind of knew what I wanted to do when I was 12 years old, and kind of pretty much never wavered from that, because I think adolescence especially is a time when, there's, I think it's better and nowadays in schools and in life in general, but especially, there's usually a focus on learning, on education, on our physical health, athletics, but there wasn't really that social emotional learning, that piece of, how do we cope? How do we reach out and touch people that may be hurting or that may be experiencing different forms of discrimination or other types of inequalities, and how do we make the world a better place? And that's when I just kind of fell in love with the profession and love doing what I'm doing.
The real JT, can we get any aha moment from you?
I mean, I think, yeah, I was trying to whittle them down, but I think, as you go through life, you have a lot of those moments where you kind of recognize in that moment that your life has sort of taken a turn. And I think when you can recognize that moment for what it is, I think it can be, super beneficial. I think one thing in particular that I always sort of think about was when I realized when I was in grad school and I was still kind of floating around, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And I met my first mentor. We had a great conversation, and he was the person that nobody wanted to work with because he was very, very tough. His name was Dr. Nash. And we just connected, and we realized that we were going to do an EEG project, and just sort of driving home and recognizing in that moment, everything just sort of clicked into place. So I think when you have those moments, the ability to recognize them for what they are is also kind of important.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's going to transition us into the next question. We're not going to answer every single question, but I do want to give a shout out to some of the individuals. Caitlin, she's a current student, and Renzo, good morning. Actually, good afternoon now. So who inspired you as a kid? Let's maybe get 2 or 3 of the panelists to tell us a little bit about somebody inspired you.
I'll pick up on that one too. So I think the person who inspired me most as a kid is my best friend. So I'm super unique that I've had the same best friend since I was 4 years old, and she's still my best friend today. So her name's Hillary, and Hillary is probably the most wonderful, amazing person in the whole world. She's very generous, brilliant, everything I try to be. And so I think even to this day, I kind of like, what would Hillary do? That smart, wonderful person. So I think having a friend that you really cherish and can keep for a long time is you can't put a price on that.
Well, hello, Hillary. If you're on, come on and visit us. Actually, anybody that's on, come visit us in Fort Lauderdale, Davie. Anybody else got an inspiration as a kid they want to shout out to?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always been mentors and teachers, kind of like what Jamie was talking about. And it seems like that does change along the way. It's as if, you go through different developmental phases, and there are sort of like these angels who are around that really help to give you the encouragement and support that move you on to the next phase of life. And so, I think that's happened throughout my life, even as I get older and older, there's still people out there who really influence the way I think and help me to be a better person. So,
great. Any other ones before we move on? And also, if you have any questions that are coming up, and let's also give a shout out to Irene from Paterson, New Jersey, or she's working in Paterson, New Jersey.
So, okay. Carlos, I'm going to embarrass one of my panelists, Terry Gerson. I've said this privately, and I'm saying it publicly. I love the way she appears on camera. I love the way she speaks. She can take some uncomfortable sort of situations and just, however, she just speaks to it as such a human, as a caring person. And I just love, whenever she wants to write a long email and send it to students, what is my first response?
Shorten it.
No, to actually record you saying it,
yes,
and then sending the email out afterwards, because the way how she delivers the information, I think it's much better. At least if I'm the recipient, much better to actually see her talk about it than actually read an email. So I do want to say that.
Well, thank you so much, Greg. I do appreciate the shout out. And no, I think part of it is, first off, Zoom has a what do you call it, the feature enhancement. So let's go ahead and go with that. But I always appreciate too logging in and seeing you both in person and on camera with the bow tie, because that inspires me to be unique, just like you, and but also the variety of bow tie colors and choices. I don't think I've ever seen you wear the same one twice. So
We've got quite a collection.
I love it. I love it.
I credit Amazon.
So I hope you have stock. So, you know, this is a part of the question, and there's a lot of folks out there that are looking for to have that kind of connection. How do you identify a mentor? And actually, we have a question that came in. Somebody's saying that what if you feel lost and unmotivated about your path? So anybody want to touch on that one? Mentors, anything?
No, I think that's a question that I would like to talk about, because one of the areas of psychology that's really interested in me this year is existentialism, and having to face those moments when you're searching for meaning. And especially for myself and working with a lot of retired professional athletes, they kind of find themselves in that situation sometimes. And it's not an easy place to be. And it takes, I think, a lot of inner reflection, and to sit with yourself and kind of determine what it is that brings you value, where those positive feelings are in life, and how you can go get more of them. So I usually tell myself or others, find something you do that you enjoy, and then try and do as much of it as you can. And then through those relationships and those activities, you might find that there's something in there that allows you to create a profession out of it, or create a hobby and build a community around something that's really important to you.
I'm gonna say something. I don't know if it's a little controversial, but when I look at those people that have mentored me, definitely I have been so blessed to have some wonderful people in my life, both in my career and in my personal life. But especially in navigating some of the things, I've learned more, I think, from those that I might have had some conflict or controversy with, than I have necessarily from those who were always, you know, like 100% supportive. And of course, we need those people in our lives too. But learning about myself, and it's like, okay, well, why is this person pushing my button? Or why am I having the same reaction to these same types of issues? And just seeing the importance of that, of learning about that. And I think that a little bit relates to, obviously it relates to my career in working with people and working with emotions. But I think that can also apply to those who are kind of looking at their career path. It's not just what do you enjoy, it's the different feelings and the different emotions, and not just passion, but just kind of your day-to-day life of what feeds you. Do you prefer flexibility over income? Do you prefer, it's like looking at those different pieces in addition to the things that get you passionate. And to do that, I think it takes meeting people. It takes, you know, reading. It takes exposure to different cultures, different jobs, different careers, and challenging yourself, even something you didn't think you'd like. So,
if I could add, I started off by talking about working in higher education. I think there's something about surrounding yourself with positive people. So think of yourself as if you're a creative person. You wouldn't want to surround yourself with individuals who are not creative, because I think that would be really stifling and I think life draining. So if you feel that you want to be in an environment where you're going to be successful, whether it is a painter or a university administrator or a politician, I think you need to surround yourself with people you admire, and people you think are very successful. Because I think being in a positive environment, and we have psychologists here who can talk about that, but I think being in a positive environment is incredibly helpful, especially when you want to become successful. So that's my contribution.
You know, Greg, I love that you mentioned this because this is a theory of creative studies that I appreciate very much, is to be in a center that inspires creativity. When you had somebody like Picasso that people know, he worked with other artists, and the Impressionists, they work with other artists. And in academic settings and in sports, people feed off of each other. We learn from each other, and that collaborative learning really is a bonus. Dr. Jungerson, you inspired me. Actually, your students are complimenting you, but you inspired me with your ability to dance, because I met you on a dance floor. And so
we won't talk about that broken pinky toe from that woman's high heel.
Oh, yes. So you never know how you're going to get that connection. Sometimes it's in many different ways. So I'm going to ask you two questions at once because I'm going to have you pick, but we'll go around. Perhaps either your favorite book or your favorite food. What's your food for thought? Tell me. Should we start with the real JT? Put you on the spot.
Oh, your favorite food? So I can tell you my favorite food, which is
And why?
why? I was a vegetarian for 22 years, so I only started eating meat recently because I did like this weird thing where I read a bunch of articles about protein needs and brain resources, and I changed my mind. And now my favorite food is actually steak.
Wow.
Wow.
Love it.
Oh, Cal, it's okay.
Dance, I said try something new.
So book or food, Greg?
Genre is more like it. I was a history major and communications major, so I love anything that deals with history. So I'll watch it, I'll read it. I love biographies. I love anything of, I don't know, of historical value. So anything with the history and politics I love. In terms of food, I love pasta and seafood in whatever variations, whatever style. I love that. That is my go-to food.
Dr. Valley Gray?
Yeah, you know, I have to say I'm similar to Greg in terms of genre. I love books about people's lives and how they got to where they are. So anything that tells their journey and their struggles and how they sort of work through that, and to see how they sort of take adversity and turn that into something powerful. And for food, anything Italian. So.
Yeah, I like that, what you just said, Dr. Valley Gray, because I'm a big science fiction reader. And I think that hero's journey motif is something that always speaks to me. Just seeing somebody that starts off with some type of struggle, some type of adversity that they don't have the tools to overcome in that time, and they have to develop that ability to overcome it, has always been a theme that excites me. So I started reading science fiction when I was a kid, Animorphs, and then I think as I got older, I started reading stuff from like Brandon Sanderson and Brent Weeks. So I know JT and I, we kind of have a science fiction kick. So we read some of those. And for food, it's definitely Mexican food. I grew up in California. So I'm like the West Coast guy through and through. Go to the little taco shop, get them just authentic, just corn tortilla, protein, some onions, some cilantro, great salsa. I mean, I could eat a burrito every day, breakfast, lunch. It's just part of who I am.
I have been known to fly into San Diego just for a California burrito.
Amazing.
Dr. Jungerson?
Well, as far as books, I'm also kind of with the more genre than a specific book. I love historical fiction, especially that weaves in not only historical events, but geography, and kind of getting to travel vicariously through that. As far as food, as much as I try to hide the accent at times, I am originally from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And there is a regional chain that if you're from the area that everyone knows, Provino's. And they have these little garlic rolls that they serve in this little bowl with like melted butter this deep and more garlic than you could ever like imagine in your life. And yeah, I could just carb load on those pretty much.
If I could say something, I lived in the great state of Arkansas for 7 years. One of my favorite things to eat was fried Oreo cookies. Love those.
Shrimp and grits, that could be, Tara, you need to make that for me.
My cheese grits, yeah, I can make my cheese grits.
Now, Julie, we need to take you down for some Cuban food because it's very different from Mexican food. But I grew up with plantains at every meal, and one of my favorite foods is a tortilla de plátanos maduro frito. So
Oh, you're just showing off that you speak Spanish.
well, I have to say it, the way I say it right, but it sounds kind of funny in English. It's a banana omelet. Now, panelists, remember that there's some questions popping up. So if you want to address any question, please don't hesitate.
Yeah, so Caitlin has a question concerning choosing a career path. And this is something that anyone who works in higher ed or college counseling, this is a question we get asked a lot. So I'll actually have the panelists talk about that. So your parents say you must major in X, but your heart is Y. What advice would you share with that person?
I actually see this all the time, because I teach in the neurosciences. So if I ask my intro neuroscience class on the first day, how many of them want to be pre-med? 90% of the class raises their hand. And most of them don't want to be pre-med because they want to. It's because their parents tell them they have to be a doctor. And so we have a lot of conversations usually, and it's not my job to persuade them one way or the other. But I do think that what I've seen in education, having taught for a long time, is that you're only going to be successful if you love what you do. And what I tell my students to do is go ahead, and the reason we have that gen ed is you should survey lots of different classes. And if you're sitting in a class and the professor's talking or you're reading and your heart starts to beat a little bit faster, you have to pay attention to that. If you're excited by what you're hearing, that's the sign that that's the path you should be in. And we know that the best predictor of success is passion and interest. And if you don't follow that, it's really going to be detrimental to you and society because you're not really offering everything that you could of yourself.
And similar to that, one of my favorite stories is, some of you may have heard of Dr. Irving Yalum, the existential psychiatrist, actually. And he went to medical school, became a psychiatrist, and he tells the story that he grew up Jewish outside of New York. And in his community and in his culture, you were either a doctor or you were a failure. And his career has evolved. Not only has he become an expert psychotherapist, but he writes wonderful teaching novels and clinical novels. And he was able to tap into that passion he had to write and that creative side. So what I would say to someone who, whether it's internally or with external pressure that's pursuing either route X or Y, is eventually you may get there. It might not be the route you thought you were going to take. But I agree with the real JT that to follow that passion and just to also maybe think outside of the box to see, okay, how could I pursue this passion and maybe take some other practical considerations into account as well, and until you find your path.
Yeah, I think that is all important things to share. And Caitlin, I can say that I know that position you're in because I found myself in that same position going into college. I really wanted to be an art major. Art was something that kind of created flow for me. It was kind of an escape from reality when there was no rules and you got to create however you wanted. And my dad decided that, you should be a business major because that's how you're going to pay the bills one day. I actually didn't do art. I stuck with the business degree and kind of followed Dad's advice. I obviously don't use a business degree now, but there were a lot of times when I think it came in handy. I didn't have a passion for it. I kind of just decided to listen to the old man and count on some of his wisdom. But I also think that I'm sure more of the panelists could talk about it is that first degree you get may not be the end of your journey. And maybe something that opens up doors in other areas. So, as you're going through your undergraduate career, I don't think it's very uncommon to jump around a little bit. I know that I've jumped around academically, so maybe it's a good start to please the parents, but you'll convince them to end up where you want to be.
Yeah, and I think that jumping around is the cool part of it, to explore, to kind of find what fits for you. And if anybody has time, there's a beautiful commencement speech that J.K. Rowling did. Her parents wanted her to be a business major. That's what made me, that was the association I had when you said that, Julius. And they felt that was the only way that she could make a living. And she talks about how ironic it is that she didn't listen to her parents and she was able to be kind of successful, if you think about it. And what would have happened to him? What would have happened to those big dreams and those big stories that she had if she didn't follow that? But I also had a student once who did feel that pressure from their parents. And so she did both things. She did what her parents wanted her to do. And when she got done with that, then she went on for a degree in psychology. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
I'm going to go into a question I like to ask, because to just get a few different types of inspirations. Sometimes people are inspired by writing, and quotes can sometimes bring a concept that just ties everything together. So I'm going to select a quote from a gentleman who in his estate, he gave money to build the building that we're in. His name was Maxwell Maltz. He was a physician in the New York City area, and he wrote a book that was quite popular in the
1960.
Thank you very much. Just before I was born, and he had a quote that people often repeat. It's "You make mistakes. Mistakes don't make you."
Mm-hmm.
And it talks about especially in higher education, whether you're at a vocational school, a university, a graduate program, this is a place to experiment, to learn, to build from our mistakes, to experiment, because sometimes an experiment could build into exactly what you want it to be. Panelists, any other quotes you'd like to give?
Well,
I was going to say, not really a quote, but I just want to build on what you were saying a little bit, Carlos. And I think that's something that we haven't touched on that is actually really important. This idea that a lot of young people, especially, are just afraid to make mistakes. And my entire life is just a series of failures. Sometimes I want to, you see people's CV and you see their resume and you see the wonderful things that they did, but you don't see all the rejections and the failed grant applications and all the classes that people struggled with. And most of my life has been failing. And I think sometimes we don't see that in other people, and we only focus on people's success story, and it makes us afraid to fail. And I think you're right, we have to make mistakes and we have to grow from those mistakes. And we need to let, especially young people, we need to let them stumble a little bit and correct that. And I think it's part of what makes us who we are.
Well, I was going to add, and we also have another question here, and it's, I don't think it's necessarily young people as well. It's people in mid-careers, where the fear of failure really stifles us. We don't want to do anything different. We don't want to investigate new ways of doing things because of the fear of failure. And the people I work with, I always say, you know what, it's okay to fail, right? Because as Tara once said, they become teachable moments. If I don't do this well, I'm going to learn how to do it. And lots of things I've been learning how to do. 2 months ago, we're using this technology, Zoom. We didn't know how to use this. Many of us failed royally using this technology. Now I think we have a high level of proficiency using this technology. And I think that's who we are as humans, that, we can fail, we should fail, but we grow from that, we learn from that, and we become better after that process.
And that's actually piggybacking a little bit on that, is that's my favorite quote, or one of my favorite quotes from the Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. And to kind of echo that, I have a poster on my, or a picture on my office wall that says, "Love the process." because depending on, again, different outcomes can happen, but you have to just appreciate the process, and it's a learning process along that path.
That's great.
Tell me, is there a song that pumps you up? Anybody want to throw something out?
On the quote
The
thing.
real JT, I think, has a song.
I could just see her in her research lab. I'm sure it's Post Malone. Is it Post Malone? Is
Well,
that who inspires you?
I told JT that I was not going to lie. Okay. So when I jog and I need to get pumped up, I actually like this song Bodies by Drowning Pool. I sing it, but I'm thinking about zombies in my head. You have to understand that. I'm a huge sci-fi fan.
Mhm.
So you guys
Any
can
other
Google
favorite
that.
song?
Well,
Any
my favorite song, it's 2 reasons. Number one, I do domestic violence research, but number 2, it's my favorite karaoke song, and that is Goodbye Earl by the Dixie Chicks.
She is dangerous with her karaoke.
I got to write that down.
Anyone else? And go ahead and pull a question, somebody from our panel or from our attendees. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and ask a different question. This is one of my favorite questions because I usually ask people, are we having fun yet? And I think we are, but I like to ask this one too because it just kind of makes us humble. What do you want to be when you grow up?
I have no idea.
Retired. Just kidding.
Not to get too serious, I always want to do social good. I want to help, and whichever vehicle that takes, I use for that, that's what I want to do. I want to leave this planet better than when I arrived. And so I always want to do that. So I know I didn't want to make it a downer. Sorry about that, but
That's not a downer, Greg, and you do quite a bit of civic engagement. You're involved with different organizations, and I see that you give hours and hours of your time beyond to do that. So I find that very inspiring.
I do too. I think you're going to be Governor Gale one day.
I would vote for it. Anybody else? Tell us what they want to be when they grow up.
I don't know. I think it's pretty interesting. It's kind of, I get, Greg, what you're saying about kind of like a downer, but I once had a football coach, and he would always say is there's going to be 2 dates on your tombstone: when you were born and then when you died. But what's up to you is the dash. And it's that space in the middle where you determine who you are. And I think for myself personally, I like to think with the end in mind. And I think about what is going to be underneath that those 2 dates, what it's going to say. And I hope that when I'm gone, that my tombstone says, gave everything he had and loved others. And if I can get those 2 things accomplished, I think it'll be job well done. So when I grow up, I'm just going to keep focusing on those intentions and trying to manifest that in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So Jenna wants us to recognize Let It Rock by Kevin Rudolph. I'll have to look that one up. Anybody else want to handle a question there before I ask another? All
There's a
right.
question about, sorry. There's a
Go
question
ahead.
about how to figure out psychology and mental health as a whole, and how to figure out which area to focus on. And I think some of that comes from taking a lot of different classes, talking to people, getting experiences, and talking to us here in the college, because we have faculty members who represent probably every area of the provision of mental health services that you can imagine. So, getting a sense of what that's all about.
So, Sarah, I want you to talk about self-reflection.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, why is that important? I mean, we all lead such busy lives. We're all asked to make decisions immediately. We have lots of pressure. Why do we need to do self-reflection?
Well, I think it has to do with a lot of what we've been talking about. There tends to be so many external pressures that people feel, And oftentimes they engage in these sort of automatic ways of responding. And in order to find your path, whether it's in psychology or some other field, it really takes a lot of knowledge about the self and thinking about what does bring you that passion and how you want to live your life. And it's a process. And I think oftentimes we put a lot of pressure on 18-year-olds to enter college and know exactly what they want to do. And I'm oftentimes a little wary when people say that, because I think it's rather young to know exactly what you want to do. Some people know that. And I find that even with grad students, they walk in and they know exactly what they want to do. And sometimes they think they know what they want to do until they come to find out what it all involves.
Yes.
And so I think it's the permission to be self-reflective that allows us to really find what we ultimately should be doing, that makes our heart feel happy, that makes us really find the way that is the path for us individually, but it only comes from self-reflection.
And I'm seeing a couple of things in the chat box kind of reflecting on that, especially here during the quarantine, people having time to kind of reflect on their careers and their career choices. And I've seen a couple of questions from attendees about basically a mid-career change and say whether they pursue business or real estate or something else, and saying, this is not where my heart is, I want to get back. And maybe asking about what that transition might look like if they did jump into that. And I know I work with a lot of folks considering that, about whether to kind of go in just, full feet first and kind of jump in. And that's what I love about our profession, is that I think, yes, that we can take students that are kind of coming straight out of like undergrad. They want to keep things going. They want to keep that momentum going in their educational studies, but also we have to acknowledge the power and the gift that comes from experience in other fields, whether it is business or some sort of other kind of healthcare provision or education system, that brings such rich depth to your work as a psychotherapist or counselor or psychologist. And as far as kind of which one to go into, it really, I think, there's so many different aspects, as Sarah was saying. There's just so many different ways, whether you're more kind of research and science minded, whether you're more practitioner minded, and also your amount of like resources, time, energy, money that you will be giving to your career choice, whatever that is, and at what stage of life you're in. So I love that about our field, is that we do we don't have this like cookie cutter, okay, this is what a counselor is, or this is what a psychologist is, or neuroscientist. It is a variety of skills and qualities and life experiences that our students bring. I think that benefits clients.
Yeah, I think that I could also talk a little bit about that, because I personally made a career switch from playing 7 years in the NFL and waking up one morning and feeling called to do something else. And I think that it's important to remember that you're going to still retain those same skill sets when you come into the field of psychology or counseling. You're going to have to learn a lot of skill sets you didn't have, but that experience is going to be invaluable. And I think the biggest kind of obstacles to getting into the field for me were, what's it going to be like being on a campus as a 30-year-old? I'm going to be older than the other students in the class. I'm so used to being the best at what I do now. How am I going to handle the process of struggling and learning and not being the veteran or the director or the person that's in these positions of power? But I think that it's that calling that you got to keep reminding yourself. And it's that feeling you have of when you're sitting there really good at what you do, making the money you want, and saying, I really need to be doing something else, or I really want to be caring for others. And as you start to listen to that and follow that, you'll still be successful in the field of psychology, because you know the path that it takes to be successful. But I think in this field specifically, you have the ability to change people's lives in a way you think is meaningful, in a way that they believe is meaningful too. And I think that's just what sets our field apart. It makes me excited to wake up and go through 5 more years of school in my 30s after already being done and pretty successful in life.
I think that's so important because sometimes people feel like they're too old, that they shouldn't go back. And I think you're never too old. I think part of this profession is being aware of that growth occurs throughout your life, and to not allow yourself that opportunity to go back to school to do something that does make your heart feel good. It's like you shouldn't let that interfere with your ability to accomplish what you want.
So I want to follow up on that, and I'm going to talk about my colleague, Dr. Perez. I think fear of the unknown, fear of whether you're going to be successful or not, I think stifles people. And Dr. Perez flies all over the world. He tells me, I'm going to Jakarta over the weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. And that fear of thinking you're not going to be successful in school, or I'm going to switch my career and I'll be, not successful there. I mean, I would love for us to talk about, Dr. Perez, how do you overcome that to fly? Or Julius, you overcame that fear of returning back to school? Because I think that really holds a lot of people back.
Well, it's funny you mentioned flying, because I actually developed a flight trauma, and it was related to 9/11. I'm from the New York City area, and so I definitely lost people. In addition, I had an experience where I had to fly to remove somebody's heart pump, make that decision. And so I had this thing with flying, but I wanted to experience more of the world. And I said I would go to every country in the world. And one of the things that I do is I enjoy going to where people tell me not to go. And I'm really annoyed when people tell me to be safe, because it's often a place that I blend. And so it's quite insulting. The other is, there was a flight, I had to go into the New York City area, and it was right around the anniversary of 9/11. And I said, you know what, I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to fly right into New York. And I challenged my flight anxiety, and I got on that plane and I had a wonderful time. So when we challenge ourselves and we overcome and we experience something, it's so addictive to experience culture. And that's the beauty of life. Julius, you got something?
Well, I mean, I think it's actually a great question, and it's probably fitting to ask somebody in their first year of doctoral school is just something as simple as, what do you do about fear? Fear it's huge, it's pervasive. It creates a lot of the disorders that we see. And there's one tried and true way to get over fear, and that's exposure. If it's scary, do it up until the point where it's just almost too uncomfortable to do. The more often you do it, the fear will start to subside. And I think that's a great thing for anybody into the counseling or psychological fields to know that if you're switching careers and you're going to sit down in front of people, you're going to have to encourage them to face their fears. And when you have been able to face yours, you model a great example for people that is just as powerful in helping them change as any psychotherapy technique that you're using.
I can also add from the neuroscience perspective, and a lot of people had commented on sort of that fear about changing careers and mid-career moves, but actually one of the best things you can do for your brain as your brain gets older is to keep learning and try to process new information. And so changing careers and learning something new midlife is actually wonderful for your brain. It could be neuroprotective as well. So it's actually quite a good thing. Well, we tend to slow down as we get older, and we slow down a little bit earlier than we probably need to. Our brains can go a little bit further if we just challenge them a little bit more.
So last chance to pull a question from the panel. So if you see one you want to answer, and then I'm going to ask my final question. Anything you want to pull?
So Dr. Perez, tell us all the countries you've not been to.
Well, my dream is to go to Antarctica, so I'm officially putting in my request to the university to go there in January. So that's not really a country. But we are going to lose Julius in a few minutes. He's got to go to class. Can we come with you? Do you think we could just follow you into class?
Absolutely.
So, my last question for today is going to be, well, you know, there was a day that a millionaire was a big thing, right? But nowadays, everybody's a millionaire. Everybody's got $1 million. Now the thing is to be a billionaire. So if you had $1 billion handed to you tomorrow, what would you do with it? And I'm going to go ahead and answer that first because I'm going to follow up with Greg's dream. I've always wanted to be a philanthropist. I would love to have like a school's name after mine, named after me, or a scholarship or something like that. It's really would be a dream just to pass things on to young people, to people that are studying, and to leave an imprint forever. That would be immortality. What would you do if you had $1 billion? Julius, since we're losing you, can I hit you first?
Yeah.
I just handed you $1 billion.
It's actually something that I have thought about before because, you know, every once in a while I'll play the lotto and I'll say, oh, why are you playing the lotto? What are you really going to do if you hit the Powerball? And if you got the hundreds of millions or $1 billion? But I think that what I would do is I would create a trust and I would really do what I'm doing now and just try and improve wellness and mental health of as many people as possible. I think it would be really cool to make a trust, and then every year, all the interest that $1 billion gained, give it away and help people improve, you know, school systems in certain underserved neighborhoods, to create better technology and more services for mental health clinics around. Just, I don't know, try to be a benevolent force with that much money, and really try to do something to help improve the world around you, because that's going to make the world better for yourself and for those people that you're sharing your city with.
Who else has got $1 billion? And should we excuse them? Go to class.
Bye, Julius.
Thank you for signing on.
Good to see you.
I would use my money to reform the educational system and make sure that all children had the social, emotional knowledge and awareness so that they had the skills to be successful in life, both from an educational and a psychological perspective. I don't think psychology is integrated sufficiently into our educational systems, and kids oftentimes don't get those basic skills in how to deal with emotions and how to understand how to effectively relate to others.
Well, I don't want to repeat what Julia said, because that was, I mean, exactly what I would do as far as establishing that trust and services for better mental health treatment, better access, less stigma to access services. But let's be real, I think all of us would probably do something a little bit for ourselves as well, right? At least maybe pay off a house or something. But so to lighten it up just a little bit, after establishing the Gerson College of Counseling at Nova, or naming the college, I would probably do a little bit of what Dr. Perez is doing and try to travel a little bit just to expand my horizons and see as many places and meet as many different people, and really just embed myself in the different cultures. That's what I would do personally too.
Yes,
I
would go to Davos.
New Zealand. Sorry, Greg.
I would travel with you, Tara.
Okay, come on.
I would agree with you guys. I think, you know, certainly supporting education is important, but one of the things that I would also love to do is, you know, as a scientist, I think it's very difficult now, especially with scientific funding the way it is, to just, you can't, like we talked about mistakes earlier, and sometimes with relying on grants, you can't really make a mistake in science. And one of the things that's hard to do now with the way funding is it's hard to just tinker in a lab, and a lot of the most amazing scientific discoveries happen serendipitously, and we, you know, scientists were sort of boxed in on what we can do based on, you know, grant applications and grant cycles. That I think I would give that money, just a lot of money, just to help basic scientists, to help scientists be in the lab, follow their curiosity, not follow what grants are going to fund. And I think we'll get some amazing results from that, just allowing scientists to do what they do historically, we know this is where so many amazing findings have come from. And so just, saying, you're a smart person, here's $1 million, run your lab, I'll see you in a year, I think would be
That's a great point. That's a great point.
So I would literally go to Davos. And the reason why is, honestly, $1 billion is not a lot of money. I mean, that's a couple of planes in the US Air Force. So I would actually leverage that amount of money with others who thought the same way I did. Because I think coming together for a common good, I think you can affect a lot more in terms of change. Like everyone said, I want to change the system. And if that means me having, breakfast with some billionaires in Davos, and we pooling our resources to change mental health or K through 12 or the environmental system, etc., that's what I would do. Because I think there's a lot that needs to change right now. And I think money is one of the things that can help us, but persuasion, but also changing the system in which we live in is going to, I think, have a lasting effect on our society.
So panelists, I'll give you one round for a final thought. I'm going to give mine first, where I'm an advocate for education, whether it be vocational training, undergraduate, bachelor's, master's, doctoral, specialist programs. Pursue your passion. And if you need assistance in getting there, my email is perez@nova.edu. It's very simple, perez@nova.edu. Any other final words?
No, I never got to say my favorite quote though.
Please do.
It's when I walk into class and it's exam day. I like to do a quote from Speed. Pop quiz, hot shots.
Dr. Perez, you should have said, "May the fourth be with you."
You can say that.
We'll grow up one day, Carlos. Today is not that day.
Well, I didn't, my parting words, I guess, too, would also just relate to education. And I wouldn't say overhauling the educational system, but making education and access to education and to vocations and other skill sets accessible and reachable, as well as I had some. I was thinking about one of the questions I think that we had thought about was some of the things maybe you wish you had changed or wish were different about the educational system. This may sound really weird, but my advice is, if you can access it, is to take a class in Latin, because it's not a spoken language, obviously, but the thinking of the learning Latin and everything of how it applies to so many different things in academics and education, that would be my advice, in addition to finding and seeking out those mentors that are going to get you to that next phase that you have in your career.
That's a grown-up response. Way to go.
No, but I'm a nerd. I have to let my nerddom out sometimes.
Tara, I'm sorry. I went to Catholic school, and the year I entered that school was the year they stopped making Latin required language.
We had that talk. I remember. Yeah. It's cool.
Sarah, it's okay if the cat comes on.
I know.
Bring him on.
Oh, cat momming.
Cat momming.
It's making it real.
So there's one last question that popped in, and I want to address it. Is there an online tool that any of you know that would suggest how to steer education? I mean, just do multiple searches, and definitely reach out for direct human contact. There's universities all over the country, ours as well, and there's professionals there that can guide you through the many opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the website, but I know Vocafer is also an online career search tool. I think it's VOCIPHER, Vocafer, that also helps with that as well.
And there's career offices on most campuses. Some career offices will advise students before they've actually fully enrolled. So take advantage of these professionals. Often they're underutilized. Same with scholarships. They're often under applied for. So one of the things that I'd like to leave as a final word is that we have an amazing higher education system in the United States. And one of the things that's so incredible about it is the opportunity for access that individuals in many levels can get to a doctoral program. NSU has some of the largest doctoral programs in the United States. And here at the College of Psychology, we have bachelor's, master's, and doctoral programs that we can certainly help you with. I'm going to be a little biased as an alum and as the director of outreach here, but reach out to people. And on a final note as well, I'd like to just thank all of our panelists. Thank you all for joining us, and have a great summer semester. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.